Hello, everyone. Welcome to the YouTube channel Sports Talk at Calle Serrano. It's a pleasure today to have three recognized sports lawyers from Middle East, or better said, based in the Middle East. And it's a great pleasure for me to introduce to all of you Ettore Mazzilli. Hi, Ettore. And Saleh
Hi, Lucio.
And Andrea Minicino. I'm pretty sure that everyone who is involved in the sports law field knows all of them. But for the one who are not involved in this fantastic field, Ettore is an Italian sports lawyer currently based in Qatar, and he has a vast experience in Qatar, how he will tell us in a while. And Saleh is from the UAE, and he was also my professor at ISDE 3 years ago. So it's a double pleasure for me to have him here. And Andrea, he's also an Italian sports lawyer, and he was the one suggesting me to go to ISDE. So if everything started, my international career has started. It's also because of him, thanks to him. So today we will discuss about the development of the football industry in the Middle East. I think it's a hot topic, and we will have a lot to learn from all of them. And so I will start with Ettore. And hi, Ettore, how are you?
I'm great, thank you, Lucio. And let me say good afternoon to everyone.
Great. So I will ask some questions to all of them, but of course they are free to answer how they prefer, and we don't have a maximum of minutes, so we will be free to talk, and everyone who is watching us is invited to ask questions to all of us. So, Ettore, the first question that I would like to ask you is about it's a general one. So, if I would like to ask you if you could briefly describe when and how professional football was established in Qatar, and how it has developed over the years until now.
Yes, first of all, Lucio, I would like to sincerely thank you for this kind invitation to join this talk. Congratulations for the initiative. I'm also very pleased to be together with two extremely qualified colleagues, and let me also say good friends. To go to your question, let me first give some information. The Qatar Football Association was founded in 1960, so it's already 60 years old, and became an affiliated member of FIFA in 1972, and 2 years later also a member of the Asian Football Confederation. However, football in Qatar started already at the beginning of 50s when some oil companies developed, and also the activities started growing up. On this basis, however, let me say that the first kind of organized football league move around, I think, 1952. You have to take this information always with a certain carefully, because we don't have official clear dates. Is a young country at the end, and therefore everything has been developed even though so quickly in the last, let me say, 50 years. Also, to give you an answer to the question how the professional football developed in Qatar, I would like to tell you and our auditors my personal experience, because also to give you an overview of my knowledge about the football in Qatar, let me say also in the Middle East. I started my professional cooperation with the Qatar Football Association already in 2005, so it's 15 years that I am here in Qatar. I know the football here, and I had the privilege to be in a certain way for certainly witness of the amazing development of football distribution. I started my cooperation on 19th of March of 2005, and I remember that my first day in the federation as legal counsel. Today I also have the position of legal director, but at the time I was legal counsel. As first action, as first request, I asked for the copy of the statutes of the federation. And this, my question, in a certain way, created a sort of panic, because they didn't know what to give me. At the end, after 3 days, I received 3 different copies of the statutes, and then I asked how 3, which one is the one registered with the Ministry of Sport? And then this was another question which put in trouble my colleagues. And then I say, at least, if not registered with the Ministry of Justice, which one has been sent to FIFA? So at the end, we found the right one, let me say. But then I don't want to be misunderstood, because we need to understand what is the reality here. So this was my starting point, which I think was absolutely normal in the reality where the development has exploded in the last, let me say, 15 years. Each year here in this region, not only Qatar, Saleh, Andrea can confirm, in terms of development, and not only related to football, it's at least 10, 20 years in our old Europe, old continent. So you have to take the proportion. And what has been reached from that moment, from that 19th of March, in which this was the starting point to arrive today to a country which has, on one side, the privilege to organize the FIFA World Cup in 2020, and also, let me say, to have been the winner of the AFC championship, to be the current champion of Asia, is an amazing results which confirm the amazing development of football in the region. When at the beginning of 2000, some famous football stars, most of them at the end of their career, I would like to mention the famous Gabriel Batistuta, Desailly, even Guardiola, but I could go ahead with several prestigious football players, moved to Qatar and start playing in the locals team. So let me say, the beginning of the professional football in a certain way can be dated at the beginning of 2000. However, only in 2008 it was established an organization, a league separate to the federation, by means of which then the activity has been developed in terms of also commercial rights, even though then, if you want, we can focus a bit more on the peculiarities of the football in this region, which has to be taken into due consideration because it's extremely different from other model of football in Europe or even in South America and in other countries or country of Asia. But what is also important when we start talking about professionalism of football in Qatar, in all the region, and let me also add, in all Asia, is to take into consideration that AFC, I don't remember exactly which date, but around 2010, introduced 2010, 2011, introduced the club licensing system, also in Asia, in a certain way, copying the model of club licensing introduced by UEFA for Europe. And one of the criteria, then we can also talk about this because are interesting aspect and consideration from the legal nature and form of the football clubs, was, however, that
technical problems. Ettore, probably we have technical problems. It was so interesting to listen to you, but let's see what. Let's try to fix it again. Otherwise, we will go on with Saleh and we will go on with Ettore later. So let's try to move to Saleh now. So Saleh, I know that you are from United Arab Emirates, and I have to be honest, I don't know so much about the football in your country, and so I would like to have a general overview of the football industry in your country, in your area, and I would like to know more how, for example, leagues are structured and the club licensing system. Floor, I will give you the floor, and let's go on.
Okay, because actually, first of all, Lucio, thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be speaking here. I think our friend is back, so we can bring back the mic to him.
We moved.
Yes, sorry, I had a connection problem. Apologize for that.
Okay, no, don't worry. I asked the same question, like a general overview to Saleh about is the football in his country, and then we will go on with you, Ettore. Okay?
Yeah, sure.
Perfect.
So thank you, Lucio. Thank you very much again, and it's a pleasure for me to be with you on this amazing initiative. Especially with very good friends, Ettore and Andrea. I would like to add on top of what just Ettore said. First of all, my voice is clear?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. So the situation Ettore described, it's absolutely relevant to most of the region and especially the GCC countries, because it was just the starting of the development of the life and the whole economy in general. And I would like just to, instead of speaking theoretically, just give you some points related to your questions about the league and how the league is structured. UAE, as you may know, it's a federation. Unlike the other GCC countries, so it's a federation between 7 emirates, and the federation happened in 1971. So the same year of the federation, the UAE Football Association was also established. And this is very strong sign that football was a very important game in the society, even in a very ordinary way where people and everyone were playing. The only game we were playing, or at that time they were playing, was football, even in a very random, ordinary way. So the UAE Football Association established the same year of the federation of the country. And as Ettore also mentioned, the year of 2008, which is not a long time ago, 12 years ago, it was the beginning of the professionalism. So the UAE Pro League started 2008. So from 2008 onwards until now, players and clubs are considered professional. Of course, the first league is the pro league. There was a pro first and second. And a couple of years ago, the first and the second were merged. So now there is pro league, where is the professional players and clubs, and there is the first league, which is the amateur, which has 17 clubs. And the professional league, only 14 clubs, with 2 clubs promotion and relegation every year, except this year the situation is still pending. So also to add, you have, unlike Europe, for example, which is they have collective bargaining agreement, something very common there. We don't have this situation. However, in terms of the financial aspect of the league, the player status regulation refer to a set of salary cap with some exceptions. So, and those things, honestly, it's been changing slightly from a season to another season. So currently, as per this season and the last couple of year season, each football club can have 4 professional international players, and the rest is local. Last year, just to engage more with the society, because as you may know, UAE is a country that hosts over 200 nationalities, and the citizen are around 15% only, 1/5. So to engage more the citizen, the residents of the country. So on top of the 4 international players, they added another 2 residents, any nationality, but they have to be a resident, grow up in the UAE, so they can register as a professional player within a league, making the total of 6. So the league become very competitive. And yeah, this is just a very brief. And I'm happy to ask later on, if you want, I would like to give you also a highlight about the situation and the strong position of the country in hosting sports mega events. And if you remember, this was one of my topic in ISDA. So Dubai, Abu Dhabi, also Sharjah, they host so many, the calendar of the sport tournaments and events, from formula to horse race to tennis to golf. It's extremely busy, but unfortunately, due to coronavirus, everything is being postponed and suspended for the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. We will have time to focus on every aspect of that later. So giving the floor back to Ettore. Ettore, I hope you solved your technical issues, so we can go on with your topic. So please go on, and which are my curiosities about the football industry in Qatar. So please go on.
Yes. Thank you, Lucio. I apologize. I don't know, the connection was interrupted. I hope that you can hear me well now. No, perfect. I wanted just to conclude mentioning this aspect, which I think is of interest for everybody. So what happened when the Asian Football Confederation decided to introduce the club licensing system, which mainly is based on several criteria, to give the opportunity, the possibility to the clubs which qualified on the field to take part to the clubs, AFC clubs competition, first of all, the AFC Champions League, was introduced also a criteria, two criteria I would like to mention. Maybe the second one later, we can talk later. The first one was about the number of minimum professional players which each club needed to have. And they stated that for the first 3 years of the implementation of the system, each club needed to have at least 80 professional players, which then became 21. This means that also in accordance with the FIFA regulation, to qualify in any case a player as professional, you need first of all a contract, but you also need, because this is the substantial aspect, to earn more than the money which cover your expenses. So what does it mean? This radically changed the face of football in all Asia, because at that time, up to when the club licensing system was introduced by AFC, there were only the foreign players as professional. Only Batistuta, Guardiola, or Desailly had a professional players also earning important amount of money. All the other players, the local players, were all of them amateurs. So with these rules, which then can be discussed as invalid or not, on one side, suddenly from one day to the other, the budget of each club of the increase dramatically, because you understand in the moment in which then you have to sign a contract with all the players, of course the budget of each club exploded. And on the other side, if you think to some countries, not only in the rich countries of the Middle East, but also some countries in Asia which do not have the financial resources of others, having at least 18, now 21 professional players in their school is not something indifferent. So this, I think, is an important aspect to be mentioned, which has changed and developed the professional football in the Middle East, but let me say in all the Asian continent, which is, as you know, not only geographically, because even Australia is part of AFC.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ettore. It was so interesting. So let's go on with Andrea, and he is an Italian sports lawyer working for the Saudi Arabian Football Association. So we listened to Ettore, to Saleh, and we had a general overview of the football in the countries where they work and operate. And so my same question goes to you. I would like to receive a general introduction to the football industry in the country where you are working.
Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me. It's a nice opportunity for me, so I'm glad to be here. And I can say, first of all, that there are somehow certain similarities if we consider Emirates and Qatar. Undoubtedly, there are, of course, those differences in terms of maybe details in terms of foreign players, but what was the development of football? It's for sure as well here a recent matter. It's clear that as for Qatar, for example, it was necessary to first of all establish a professional league in order to develop at least technically what could be considered nowadays a real football. Of course, football in Saudi Arabia exists since a long time. Already in the late 50s we had football.
Really?
But consider that the federation, if I'm not wrong, was established in 1956. And of course, in that period, football was organized on a regional base. So you had the different regions in the north, the south, and so on, which were organizing football within, of course, clearly a different type of level and category. In every part of the world, I would say that in the 50s and in the 60s, football was different. We are talking about more something related to passion, to a sort of, really pioneeristic sporting activity where there was not much space for business, for image rights, and so on. Of course, not even broadcast revenues and so on. But anyway, they developed across the years. They had they participated starting from the 80s to international competitions, and I have to say that, however, they had their great moments, winning 3 times the FC Champions Cup. I mean, for sure, it was already in the past a competitive football. But of course, we have to wait the recent area, I would say, starting from the 90s, to see something which we could call professional football. Technically, we had until the let's say 2007 a league which was semi-professional.
Okay.
And then it became fully professional, and I'm talking about the first division, which is called the Saudi Pro League, and also we have the first division, which, however, it's the second division. Sorry for the, but this is the in fact what is the situation. The second tier, I would say, it's called first division, or Mohammed bin Salman League from the Prince, and as well here we have professional players as well, and then we have the semi-professional clubs in the third category. So anyway, thanks also mainly to the investment they operated in the field and the academies, also in the foreign, I would say, in the foreigners who joined the federation and the football clubs. They had the opportunity to have a different perspective, no, from people coming from different countries. I think it's always positive to work within an international environment for everybody, because you have different feedbacks, and these allow the federation to make the movement grow up. Now there is, for example, a limit of 7 foreigners per team I'm talking about the match squad. So you could even put in the starting 11 7 foreigners,
Okay.
which is, however, a considerable number. Probably it's the largest in Asia, if I'm not wrong.
China, for example, is like 4, the maximum.
I think in Japan, for example, they don't have a limit in the number of players they can register in terms of, but they cannot put in the starting 11 more than 5, if I'm not wrong. Anyway, there is no one from the Japanese Federation, so nobody can tell me no, so it's okay. But anyway, the football league nowadays it's surely more competitive, and I mean, the victory of Al Hilal last year, it's a proof of this. Missing, I think, for many years, a victory of the Saudi clubs, to be honest. But anyway, it's still there. The Saudi clubs are competing. For sure, the presence of foreigners is good for the average level of the clubs. However, if you want to improve the quality of your national players, it's not enough. I think it's important to work on the academies at grassroots level. And for this, anyway, at the beginning, you need foreigners. I mean, to bring just a different know-how. I mean, I'm sure that the Saudi coaches are capable, and as well as referee. But anyway, I think it's important to bring still foreigners, and then for the Saudi vision they have in 2030, maybe they will be able to, I don't know, to be completely independent from foreigners, although I don't think it's strictly necessary. I mean, to remain within an international environment and dimension, it's always positive to have someone from outside who can take a look at things from a different angle. However, I think we can talk about the development in a different question. So I didn't want to repeat the same things. Of Saleh and Ettore, that they already explained very good what is the situation there. So I wanted just to change a bit and give you maybe let's say, the opportunity to move to another theme, to another question, if you want.
Yeah.
Of course, I remain open at any question. I mean, whatever, any curiosity, whatever. I mean,
Perfect.
there are lots of things we could talk about. So please.
So coming back to Ettore, I have some more specific questions for him. So the first question is related to the legal framework in which the clubs operate. So I would like to know if the clubs in Qatar are considered like companies, like let's say in Italy, Juventus, Roma, and most of the team, or if they are a simple sports association. And another important question for him is related to what the government is doing for boosting the football industry, and also for promoting the national level of football, even talking about the national team, talking about cultivating the local talent. So I don't know, football academies, youth academies, youth teams. I don't know, for example, if some clubs have to put in the pitch, I don't know, three football players grew up in the local team, in the youth team. So I'm very curious to know more about these topics.
Yes.
Floor to you.
Thank you, Lucio. I hope that you can hear me well, because I have to admit I had some problems in listening Andrea well. By the way, thank you for these very interesting questions. Let me say that the two questions can be even linked and can be also considering together. In any case, what I was saying before and what then you gave me the opportunity to focus more, I think is extremely interesting from the legal point of view to understand this framework in which the clubs, at least in Qatar, but again, mutatis mutandis, like lawyers like to say, this can be also applied to other countries of the region. And due to the fact that also with reference to the legal structure, the legal form of the clubs, everything changed with this AFC club licensing regulation. We have to do an historical excursus because it's extremely interesting, even much more than the change of the status of players that I mentioned before. Why? Because one of the requirements that AFC introduced
Let's see if you, Ettore, you are freezed. So like before, sorry to our viewers for these technical problems, technical issues, but in this kind of webinar, it can happen. So the same question goes to Saleh. And so we move on to Saleh, and Saleh, feel free to answer. Of course, what is the situation about your country?
You mean about, the question was about the legal structure?
The legal structure, the legal framework of the clubs, and what the government is doing to promote the football at the national level.
Okay. Again, I'll try to give bullet points, but maybe Ittori is back, so it's we can stay with it.
Let's see if you can go on. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Okay. So we will continue with Saleh in a while. Please go on, Nestor.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My Wi-Fi is usually very good, but today I don't know, some problem in the connection. I really apologize, but sounds strange. Anyway, let me go a bit quickly because I wanted to explain you a bit what happened. So when AFC introduced this criteria, one of the main points was that all the clubs must become commercial entity. What does it mean? Commercial entity, that means that you have to be established as a company. Now, for example, in Qatar, there was at that time a law governing the sport organization expressly mentioning that all the clubs could be only no-profit organizations. So this means that they could not be companies, they could not be established as companies. So the problem was a big issue because, as you can understand, if we would have not amended the law of the state of Qatar, then the club would have not had the opportunity to be eligible to get the license from AFC to participate in the competition. This was a problem which many countries, many federations, and then many countries in Asia face. Also, I think it was the same in UAE and in Saudi, because the sport was organized by multi-sports club, all of them sorry, no profit organization. So what we did in Qatar was a long process, but at the end we find a solution which solve everything. Also because I think legitimately the government didn't want to give to the club the possibility to aim for profit. You know, also in Italy, the law governing this activity, the professional football activity, then was changed from the subjective profit to the collective. So what happened? We follow in a certain way the same system because we decide to establish all the football club as a company, but only with one shareholders. This shareholder was the previous no-profit organization, the previous multi-sport club, and was also clearly stated that in case of profit, the profit had to be reinvested for the development of football. So there was not the possibility to share the profit among the shareholders. In any case, was only one shareholder and was the previous multi-sport club no-profit organization, which remained a no-profit organization. This what means that all the face of football in a certain way changed, but once more and once again, the government was in full support of the activity. We have to take into consideration that the model of organization of football in Qatar, but again also in all the GCC countries, all the area, is different from the common concept of organization that we have, for example, in Europe. Why? Because even though the situation in the last year has changed, let me say that 90% of the budget of clubs is coming from governmental subsidies, from public money. So this, of course, change radically the face of football. And you know, here sports, especially in Qatar, but also in Saudi, also in UAE, has been one of the forms to promote the country. So you don't have to look at it also only as a form of development of the sport itself, but it's also a way to promote the country, and let me say, in absolutely legitimate and positive way. If then you keep in mind, because then the government, at least in Qatar, is supporting in full the sports activities, however, without interfering in the autonomy of sports. You know that one of the pillars in the regulation is the autonomy, the independency of the sport organization from any governmental influence. We have the example of Kuwait of some years ago, which was banned by the Olympic Committee, the IOC, for governmental interferences. There was also a provision similar to this imposed by FIFA, for Kuwait was not allowed to take part. Then the problem has been solved, but this is always important. What is also important to say with specific reference to Qatar is that the situation in this relationship between sport and state authorities changed in 2016 when was established for the first time in the state of Qatar a Ministry of Culture and Sports, which in a certain way absorbed some of the competence that before were granted to the Qatar Olympic Committee. So before 2016, before the establishment of the Ministry of Sport, let me say that the Olympic Committee didn't have only an authority from the sports side, but was also the entity which was in a certain way managed the financial public support to the sport organization. From 2016, the Qatar Olympic Committee is mainly focusing on the Olympic preparation in the support from the sports side of the sports federation, and then from the financial side, and let me say also in some other activity, even though with the usual respect of the autonomy, all the competences have been transferred to the Ministry of Sports.
Okay, cool.
Then regarding the promotion of the activity, then I could talk for hours, but I don't want also to take all the time. I think it's interesting to also listen the other colleagues, Andrea and Saleh. However, I can then maybe take again the floor and talk about the organization of Aspire, the organization of youth sport in the state of Qatar, which has also allowed to reach amazing results. Because again, for Qatar, winning the Asian Championship in 2019, being the Asian champion, is like, with all the due respect, Luxembourg should win the UEFA Cup. So has been an amazing result which didn't arrive from nothing. So there is a planification, a long plan activities, a program, and this example of Aspire has given an amazing contribution. But as I said, I don't want to take all the time, and maybe we can focus more at the end about this point, and I can leave then the floor to my colleagues to present their respective experiences.
Yeah, sure. So I will go on with Saleh. Saleh, please, you were telling us how is the situation in your country regarding the legal framework and what the government is doing in order to promote the football industry. So please go on.
Okay. So again, I will build on top of what Itori says.
Sorry, Saleh, we cannot hear you very well.
Okay, now you can hear me better?
Better.
Okay. So I was saying that I will start on top of what Itori just said, because the situation to some extent is similar. And as you know, as any football club in any country, there is of course, a regulation and obligation to follow the confederation where you are, and also the FIFA level. So in the UAE, originally as a history, even before the federation, even before the establishment of the UAE Federation as a country, football clubs were established before the 1971. So it was established by each government. So each local government, we have 7 emirates, each of them have a local government. So, and each club established by one of those governments, okay? And then those clubs became members of the UAE Football Association.
Okay.
And with the modern regulations of AFC in 2018, all football clubs in the UAE have set up a private companies and to take care of specific areas, whether football or investments or other games as well. So today, every football club, it's a private company registered with the Ministry of Economy, registered with the Economic Department. And because it's a private company, it also fell under the company law, UAE companies law. So, and here I would like to highlight something which some stereotype or people may misunderstand, which is because it's a private company. So legally speaking, investors or businessmen can buy shares on those companies, or even can set up completely new football club as a new private entity. But since the beginning, all of the clubs were owned by the local governments, and those clubs associations have established and set up those private companies. But if I give you some development, this last year in 2019, and this was in the news, there was a new club to come, and it was established by a private entity owned by a quite well-known figure, which is Prince Abdullah bin Musa'id from Saudi Arabia, who's also the owner of Sheffield United in the Premier League. So he has established a new club in the UAE called Al Hilal United. So of course, because it's a new club, in addition to the commercial requirements of the Ministry of Economy, they need to take a vote from the General Assembly of the Football Federation and also from the General Authority of Sport, which sit as a Ministry of Sport, similar structure. So, and as per the UEFA statutes, that club should start from the lowest division. And in the UAE, as just told you, we have the Pro League and the First Division. So that club will be starting with the First Division, and if they do well, they can be promoted to the professional division in a couple of years. So this is regarding the structure of the legal structure of football clubs. In terms of football association, actually we have Andrea with us. Maybe I leave some floor for him, because also the situation is similar about the establishment of the judicial bodies within the football association. So more or less, most of the GCC countries have similar structure, which is in line with FIFA criteria in establishing the local DRC, and there are some differentiations, but more or less the same. And that's it. Saudi maybe have the recent or 2 years ago established the Saudi Sports Arbitration Center, which we have also the pleasure to participate in establishing this center and be among the first list of arbitrators. So maybe I stop here and I'm happy to ask or answer further questions.
Thank you very much, Saleh. It was very interesting listening to you. And so now I'm curious to ask Andrea if there are some analogies or some differences in the country where you are working, considering what Saleh has just said.
Yes, here, okay, maybe here we can find a certain difference with the other two countries, because in Saudi Arabia, still clubs are not private companies.
Okay.
In Saudi Arabia, clubs are owned by the government. Yes, the government owns the clubs. This means that, of course, we're not talking about the same, let's say, principles applying to these realities, because it's clear that, I mean, the government will still cover most of the, let's say, financial needs of the clubs, although in light of the vision 2030, the perspective is the one to prioritize the clubs. So in the last 5 years, after the establishment of the General Sports Authority, which is by nowadays called the Ministry of Sport, it was let's say started to, it was planned a program of gradual privatization of the clubs, first of all through let's say the education of clubs to be able to provide for themselves a certain financial solidity. This essentially means to be able to take care of their IPs, of their trademarks, to be able to correctly, to be able to, let's say, assess whenever it's possible to get funds through private initiatives, and of course to take care of all the sports law related matters. So the disputes and of course to be coherent with the regulations. I've realized in the almost 3 years that I've been here that anyway clubs have already improved a lot. Most of them hired in-house lawyers, or anyway they hired good experienced lawyers who can contribute to this, so they have their back covered. However, still there is space for an improvement in terms of know-how. I'm talking about, for example, the solidarity contribution and training compensation mechanisms. I see a lot of still potential in this. I mean, we can, as federation, we can assist the clubs somehow, of course, in providing some guidelines and directives. And we organize a lot of workshops also to improve the situation in the perspective of having full independent clubs, which will be able to, rely not only on the traditional revenue streams, which are broadcast, ticketing, or match days and so on, but also on new modern systems, because nowadays, and this COVID crisis showed us, the digital market is one of the keys for this, also for the football clubs to increase their revenues. And this helps in terms, of course, of privatization, because they will have to rely more on these sources. Still, the government, however, as I said, it's taking care of it to avoid that during this transitional regime there might be any, let's say, incident or accident. However, one thing to say is that already it was organized, let's say, a plan to little by little set up these new clubs as private corporations, and I guess that this will require time, but in the end will happen before maybe even 2025, maybe even in 2-3 years we could really already see most of the Saudi clubs as private. What else? This in general lines. We could also say that, however, there is an important, let's say, there is an important matter to solve, which is related to the foreign, the possibility of having foreign investors or not. Actually, and currently, the situation is that we have only Saudi sponsors. And this means that, first of all, we have to allow for foreign sponsors, and then in perspective foreign investors. I think, however, that considered how big was the improvement in different sectors in the last years, this could potentially happen really within a short period. But I cannot, of course, prognosticate exactly when it will happen.
I see. It was very interesting what you said, and with a great view on the future. And coming back to like more specific law related questions, I have a question for Ettore, and then I will extend them to all of you. And it is, what about sponsorship agreements, commercial rights, and TV and audio rights? So I think that Ettore will be the first one to answer, but I will be curious to know from all of you later which are the similarities or the analogies or the differences in your countries.
Yes. About this, let me start saying something important as general consideration. Even though, for example, these three countries, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia, are in this development process, as we have seen, of sports and football particularly, very similar, we cannot forget that there is a substantial difference, at least between Qatar and Saudi. But let me also say that UAE is similar to Qatar. I'm referring to the demographic aspect, because Saudi Arabia, in terms of population, I don't know now exactly the number of the population, but let me say is a sort of elephant compared to the little mouse of Qatar. In Qatar, we have, this is an important aspect, we cannot jump on this topic, because if you take into consideration that the current population in the state of Qatar is equal to 2.8 million people, and out of these, only 315,000 are Qatari citizens. So there is an amazing proportion. This is important in terms of on one side, and out of that 2.8 million inhabitants, let me say at least 1.2 are workers, Asian workers in the field of the construction. So are Bangladesh, Nepali. So then, of course, it changed in terms of also potentiality of the market. So when we talk about TV rights, we talk about any kind of commercial development and incomes. I can tell you that today in Qatar the situation is radically changed since when I moved here. Going back in terms of the organization, when I started my cooperation, there were no more than 40 people working in the federation. Today, over 300. This just already give you the idea of the development of the movement, the federation, the organization. And I remember, I can tell you a story to make a bit lighter the things, but I think it's self-explanatory of the changing of the reality, because it's important. I said before that at least in Qatar, 90% of the budget of the clubs is coming from the government. But today, you know better than me, the oil crisis, now the pandemic, there is also a blockade going on in the region. At least in Qatar, financially, one of the richest country in the world, for per capita income, but in any case, not like some years ago. In any case, the model of football has to change. So what I was telling you is that at the beginning, one day the president of the federation called me in his office, and because he was there with a very smart marketing manager, he was an American with good experience in the NBA, American professional sports, totally marketing oriented, because the federation was looking for somebody in the position of marketing director. So he asked me to join him and to have a conversation. And again, this manager was very well, extremely qualified. So he started talking, pushing on the maximum marketing orientation. But at the end, and then when he left, the president asked me, Ettore, what is your opinion about this? I said, I was really impressed. I had also some studies in marketing. I think the person is extremely qualified. Of course, with this marketing orientation, which is typical of the sport business in the North America. And I say, I think could be the perfect person. And then the president looked at me and he say, but we don't need money. We just need to find somebody who help us maybe to attract more spectators in the stadium, to develop the attention toward football. So this was the situation, let me say, 2008, 2009. But today, the president, who is always the same, is the one who is pushing to now develop the exploitation of the commercial rights. So this story, which can be a funny story, but for me is extremely interesting because give the idea that also in these countries now, you are looking also to private investment, the possibility to attract investors. However, honestly, coming back to Qatar, I see difficulties in the promotion of business. So the market is really limited. So I really don't know what can be the potential. But from my modest point of view, I think that the situation in this country in the future, maybe in a medium long term, will radically change. This financial support from the government, of course, is crucial and will always be there. But the situation is changing, and I think that also all Asia is football in Asia. I know that you have another talk in I think Friday on the development of football in Asia, extremely interesting topic. The situation is radically changing there. So if you think about football in Asia, is growing a lot. So somebody some years ago said that future of football is Asia, and I agree. However, there are now everybody thinks about China and Middle East. Both are really interesting experiences, situation. But let me say there are other realities like country, I would like to mention Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, which have important numbers. We are talking about 70 million, 110 million inhabitants. So there is amazing potentiality to develop from one side the business, but let me say also the practice of football. In Thailand, is a country that I know, I go often for all. The special sport is Muay Thai, the Thai boxing. But if you look now, all the children are playing football. So this is something interesting. The Thai national team is the Asian champion under 19. So there are important aspects which has to be taken into consideration. However, just for closing, then I mentioned in 2008 in Qatar has been established this league, the Qatar Stars League Management with the Qatar Stars League. They are very much marketing oriented. As I say, the situation year by year has changed. They are always looking to the market, trying to develop the activities to have more private investment, more sponsor. The situation of the TV rights is particular, but let's see. It's an interesting situation, and what I can say in conclusion is that this Qatar, as also the other country, needs to change a bit model of business and to look more to the market.
Yeah. I see. So now I'm very curious to know from Saleh and Andrea what they can add to what you said, if there are some differences or analogies in their respective countries. Please, Saleh.
First of all, you wanted from a football perspective or sports perspective?
No, let's say a sport perspective in general.
Yeah. Second, it's difficult to comment after the great lecture in marketing and business and sport by Itori, with the proper background. So again, I will just add something on top of this. So because yes, it's sports, developing a sport in the UAE, it's of course important to develop the sport as such, but also it's one element part of whole experience, which is sports, tourism, entertainment, all comes together. So we've been working closely with some of the main entity like Abu Dhabi Sports Council, for example, in overseeing most of the activities, sport activities in the capital and also other Emirates. So the point about the population is, of course, is crucial, because speaking about Saudi Arabia, they are over 30 million. UAE close to 10 million, but again, local citizens are more in love with football. So again, we have around 15% only of citizen local, while in Saudi Arabia, the larger proportionate is the citizen, the local. So the fans experience in Saudi Arabia, sometimes you feel you are in a Champions League in Europe, for example. Very similar. I'm sure, Andrea, if they play in Al Jawhara, for example, the Clasico in Jeddah or the Clasico in Riyadh, sometimes you feel you are absolutely in one of the strongest Clasico in Europe. So back to UAE, the fan base for the football being a very challenging aspect, and it's always making headache for the pro league. They are trying and working and bringing different ideas and to generate more fan base and fan experience, but it's still challenging. However, speaking from other sports, the country considered, one of the handful around the world that leading in hosting various sports, and so most of them also considered one of the official round from the international sports federation, whether tennis, whether cycle, the Emirates Tour, or it used to be Abu Dhabi and Dubai Tour. Now they merged them under the name of Emirates Tour. The formula every year. So I can tell you, because the economy itself outside sport is a very strong, driven by international, local, but at the same time international companies that they are well known in the area of sports sponsorship. And at the top of them is Emirates Airline, for example, and also various international banks, including HSBC. So those commercial entities are competing with each other by who's to sponsor the most attractive tournament or game. So we have seen in the last couple of years that those tournaments also, in addition to the indirect profitability and indirect benefits and marketing to the whole country and to so many other sectors, including hotels, airline, F&B, etc. They are always also become profitable for the organizer because of the high value of sponsorship. Especially if you can negotiate, and this is very important aspect, if you can negotiate with the international federation that you still allowed to bring some local sponsors for the best interest of the local organizer or the organizing committee, this also can balance the, I would say, the utilization and to take proper advantage of hosting any event. So that's it.
Thank you very much. And now the floor goes to Andrea. Andrea, what do you have to add to what Saleh and Ettore greatly said and explained to all of us?
Well, I have to say that it was very interesting to listen to both of you, because actually you both gave me the, let's say, the right input in terms of what we're talking about. I mean, and it's very interesting to know about different realities. Although we are geographically very close, I have to say that I'm finding some interesting differences. Of course, as Saleh said, here we are in a reality where you can have a really big fan base. I see, at least for the main teams in Riyadh, for example, the stadiums often full, which is always something positive, and also something that can be exploited in terms of exactly revenues, as I was saying before. But clearly, you could use it more. You could take advantage of this in a better way, even through a good marketing campaign. We could maybe ask to Ettore, the guy, about the guy from the marketing. Now we have actually we're trying, of course, to as federation, of course, we care about the marketing of the federation, of course, about I mean, but in the same time, of course, it would be interesting to let's say develop a common marketing strategy for all the clubs. Then, of course, everyone is free to adopt his own policies. But for sure, it could be a good initiative, maybe, to organize something more, I mean, innovative, since you have maybe even more opportunities. As I said, probably we could, for example, try to consider the, let's say, the weak point as the international image of these countries in terms of football. And I say it not, of course, in an offensive manner. I mean that clearly foreigners as spectators usually don't take a look at football matches in these countries. While and I realized that the technical level of Saudi Arabia in terms of leagues, but also of Qatar, because I mean, I'm not talking only about Saudi Arabia, I'm talking about the Middle East. It's too often overrated, underestimated, sorry. I mean, I realized that many people, especially from Europe, for example, consider it as a football of, let's say, second level in comparison. Of course, it's clear that it's very extremely difficult to compete with Europe as a football for Asia in general. And this, it's normal, even because, I mean, maybe for the Middle East, for Asia in general, football, it's something more, let's say, recent in terms of even history, passion, but not so much now. I mean, now we are in 2020. I think it's time to upgrade. I see, for example, watching sometimes matches here, that since, as I said, many foreign players are currently in the clubs, the average level, technical level, is not so bad actually. And I would say that maybe some clubs in the top positions could compete not for winning the Italian league, but they could at least compete for a position within the first 10, even the Champions League positions. I mean, I don't see in Atalanta something so stronger than Al Hilal or Al Nassr, honestly, or Al Tawun. I mean, of course, Al Sadd, for example, in Qatar, has a good team which could compete with other teams in Italy as well. To make an example, or I mean, there is a lot of clubs called in the same name actually, also in Emirates, right? Like Al Ahly, it's a name which you find as well, because the names of these clubs, and the Saleh, of course, can explain it better, however, are related to, let's say, important general words, values, principles, and so on, like the people, or like something related to the the power, the community, etc., etc. This is interesting actually, because since I'm a foreigner and I came without knowing Arabic, I started to find out a lot of interesting curiosities about the football, also in these terms. I think we can continue, however, with our conversation, moving even to deeper. I mean, as you wish.
Yeah. And like in this sense, Ettore,
Yes, Lucio, if you allowed me, yes,
sure.
I have to activate the micro.
Yeah.
If you allowed me to add something to both Saleh and Andrea, and to focus a bit more on this issue of, on one side, the development of football, because this is the topic of our talk, from the sportive side in the Middle East, and from the other side, the development of football from the business side, because we all agree that the situation has changed and you need to develop, you need to improve. The situation has changed, and is changing and will change even more in the future. Now, what I would like to say, and honestly, I don't want to talk at all about political aspects, which are far from us. You know, there is an ongoing situation here on the blockade, but this is a political. Let me talk about the sports matter.
Let's wait. You were freezed in the
Lucio, did we exceed the time, or just for our information?
No. I mean, we can. I just received a question from Farid from Azerbaijan, and I would like to ask you like the last question together with the Farid's one. So, but now Ettore came back, so he can continue telling us what he was saying.
Sorry. No, thank you. Sorry again, but it's not up to me. In any case, what I was saying, for example, the situation of the league in Qatar is that you have the Qatar Stars League, the first division, with 12 clubs. And then you have now a second division with 8 clubs. Out of this club, 5 are professional clubs. And then a couple of years ago have been added 3 amateur clubs. Why? Because you don't have enough clubs to play the league. And if you look at the ranking at the Qatar Stars League, the first division, and then are always 2-3 clubs who are Al Sadd, Al Duail, Al Gharafa, Al Rayyan to fight for the title. So what I would like to say that now, apart from any political discussion, I don't want to talk at all, but what I think is important, and it's just my point of view, and maybe I hope in the future, not so far, will be a possibility. What I really think, and there was already some discussion in the past, I think that that keeping always the format of the competition in the countries. However, the idea, for example, to have an inter-league between the top 4 clubs in Qatar, four top clubs in UAE, 4 top clubs in Bahrain, four top clubs in Saudi, is something that could be extremely beneficial. Number one, in terms of development of the level of football, because of course, if you play with an amateur team or a competitive team, this helps to develop the level of football. And then, last but not least, in terms of business, because in terms of then market, you change radically from the 2.8 million of population in Qatar to how many people you can potentially reach, 300 million. So now this maybe is a provocation. I don't think so much. Now, of course, nothing to do with the current political situation. But if we have to give a concrete contribution, how we can see the development of football in the region, I cannot abstain myself to think about that. I don't know what is the opinion of Andrea and Saleh.
Saleh, what would you like to add?
In terms of?
In terms of promoting the football, also from a marketing point of view, my question is also related to what Farid said. That his question was, which are the realistic goals of the Middle East football? So my question is how it will be. It can even better. And my other last question, and I take the opportunity to ask you this, is what, in your opinion, the government could do to boost the football industry in your country, and I mean also from a marketing point of view?
Yes, I think speaking, first of all, I agree with Ettore, but just to add one more point. Thinking from UAE perspective, I think if you consider the whole residents of UAE, which is up to 10 million, if you are really understanding how to engage the whole population of the country, where you have almost 200 or over 200 nationalities, you really can come up with a beautiful game. And a beautiful also fan base, very mixed, very cultural. This is one aspect. The other aspect, I think, of course, no doubt, they need much more investment and focus on the grassroots and the academies, which is not depend on the clubs actually nowadays. We have few clubs who take care of this. The rest is not necessarily. And this is actually a big issue because of when you have a small population, to have a good academy is even more like this is almost to secure the football in the country. You need a proper academy to push and to continue taking care of those kids, to train them properly. This is about the football itself, but also I think currently, I mean, in terms of a goal, you know, the government is moving forward fantastically. The federation is not always able to follow up the very optimistic goals of the government. But in football, actually, you know, football, there is no impossible in this game. And in the last FIFA Club World Cup, one of our club that was extremely excited about competing with Real Madrid and other top clubs, really they provided and they showed performance that we were also surprised. Al Ain Football Club specifically was playing in the last FIFA Club World Cup, and they reached up to the final playing against Real Madrid. And if anyone watched the match, he will believe, he can see that it was a very difficult match for Real Madrid to win against Al Ain. So they were almost to be the club of the world. But so as also Andrea mentioned earlier, there is like 1-2 clubs in each country that they more or less have a reasonable level of performance that they can compete. But this again goes back to what just Ettore mentioned, that if the level of the league is really consistent and strong, the performance will go extremely higher. But when you compete with a couple of strong clubs and the rest are lower level, then this is what is challenging the development.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And what is your opinion, Andrea, about that?
Well, I was thinking that a good initiative might be, for example, especially it's honestly, it's really, let's say, more than interesting. I would say it's really appealing, the idea of international cup between these countries. In the terms of, for example, promoting this football outside, you could start to broadcast for free on some platforms like YouTube or Facebook some matches of the big teams belonging to these countries. This would start to create even an international fan base because maybe it's more interesting than watching some matches in the Romanian league, with all the respect, of course, I'm joking, or in the Italian league, because even in the Italian league, wherever, maybe only the Premier League is a bit different from this. You have in the bottom matches which are not so interesting, like it could be a match between the best team in Saudi Arabia and the best teams in other Gulf countries, in Emirates, in Qatar, I mean, uh, so I don't think that there is a limit of possibilities. I think there is a limit deriving from politics. But of course, it's not my duty to solve it. But anyway, there is maybe also, and this crisis showed us a potentiality in terms of digital broadcasting, which is strangely still not used a lot. Even for European competitions, actually, was not really, because until now, for example, football was always belonging to TV, and rarely to internet. Even in 2020, most of the competitions are followed by people on TV. We already have something, but if you consider which are the numbers that they could achieve, it's really still really not exploited at all. And maybe to start with these new competitions, because for people from outside the Middle East, these are new worlds, new dimensions. This could be a good opportunity. Of course, it's just talking mine. I don't have. I understand. I don't have concrete plans for this because I can see that there are already the tools. You don't need to invent something new, actually. So you don't need a genius to create such a system. But also maybe it's a matter of, for sure, it's a matter of agreements with the broadcaster, especially here in the Middle East. We have the issue with being sport and so on, which is affecting the entire region for some, I mean, in terms of TV broadcasting. And I can say that maybe it's a matter also of it could be also a positive thing, the fact that football until now was not really marketing oriented. Of course, under a financial point of view, as I mean, advisor is not good, of course. But if you consider that football was born as almost a romantic matter, romantic passion, maybe the fact that still here in some countries people consider mainly the sporting approach, the sporting dimension in all his, let's say, fairy tales, in all his magic atmosphere. still it makes me believe that the passion didn't die, and still there is space also for this. Although I realized, of course, that nowadays money are the most important aspect in football. At least this is what I can see. And of course, the business has to evolve also through, especially through money, but of course, to enlarge the fan base, money maybe through the marketing are okay, are maybe the most necessary things, but not the only one. You need to create the enthusiasm of people. First of all, to create enthusiasm of people, you have to show them fun, to show them, yes, opportunities to have fun. And this is why the NBA, for example, is a good idea, to apply the NBA principles to the league. Even for me, even in Europe, I would like, to have a European league there is the Champions League, but I mean something like a real division where Juventus, Manchester United, and Real Madrid and so on compete. To see every day, to watch every week Paris Saint-Germain or Real Madrid against Barcelona and Manchester would be very really exciting. And why not to do it here?
Yeah. And according to this, I mean, I would like to conclude with my last question for Ettore, because we talked about marketing and business, like football intended like a business oriented matter. And so, of course, asking you about the realistic goals for Qatari football, I have to mention the next World Cup, which will be played in the country where you live. So, Ettore, what is your opinion about that? How do you think that organizing a World Cup can help the development of the football industry in your country, and which will be the benefits that your country will receive from the World Cup? No audio.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Lucio, I got just some part of the question. The connection, unfortunately, is not the best, but I think I have understood your question in the sense that you ask what will be the impact of the World Cup in Qatar, how it will be managed, and what is the future for that, if I have understood. I hope you can hear me well. And I will also, in the light of this connection, which is not the best, try to be short. I think that the World Cup 2022 in Qatar will be amazing, using also the word of the promotion of the event itself. Why? Because first of all, the country has been working for already 10 years in the preparation of this event, because it started in 2010, beginning of December 2010, when FIFA decided to assign the edition 2022 to Qatar, and there are still 2 years to go. It will be amazing because the country is totally dedicated, the government is fully supporting. The country has changed radically in more infrastructure in preparation of the World Cup, and will be amazing because let me say, it's the first time you can have a FIFA World Cup only in one city. This happened for the Olympic Games, but never for the World Cup, which is a completely different kind of event. So the FIFA World Cup is completely different from the Olympic Games. from many perspectives, of course, not only the fact that it's one sport, and the Olympic are, I don't know now how many, I think 30. So, but for the target, the kind of supporters, for many reasons. And will be amazing because you will have for the first time potentially the opportunity to assist to all the matches if are not played at the same time. So only the last match day of the group will be played simultaneously. But apart from that, you could potentially assist the match at 3 o'clock, the match at 6 o'clock, the match at 9 o'clock. Is an amazing opportunity. The stadia under construction or the one already completed are unbelievable. I have been working the football for the last 25 years. I have been in many stadiums in the world, and what I have seen here, it's unbelievable. I was also in Brazil. I was for the World Cup. So really, I have seen many stadia, and what has been already realized here is unbelievable. Also in terms of infrastructure will be amazing. So really, I think is a fantastic event. Qatar, from the very beginning, put the issue of the legacy as one of the main points, even in the bid, in this candidature, because of course, after the World Cup, what will you do? What you could do with the 8-9 stadia of at least 40,000 spectators in a country which we know has a limited, let's say, number of population, and it's more than enough. But also, in this respect, I can tell you some of the stadia will be even dismantled and donate to associations that need infrastructure like that. So also in terms of legacy, what has been done and what will be do, it's really fantastic. So let's see what is going on. Let me say that I hope in a certain way again that then the region will be in a different atmosphere in 2022 to facilitate in any case the movement of all the supporters and tourists. But in any case, Qatar is open to everybody, and I am sure that will be a successful event. I also hope that I also think that many people will come because geographically then is perfectly located between Asia, Europe, and Africa. Let me say is perfectly located. So again, I think that will be a great event, and I hope everything will go smoothly, inshallah.
Perfect. Thank you, Ettore. I was very curious to know more about the next World Cup. So thank you very much for illustrating to us what is going on. And so, guys, thank you very much for your time, for your dedication. It was really a pleasure to listen to you and to learn a lot from all of you. Thank you, Ettore. Thank you, Saleh. Thank you, Andrea. I'm pretty sure that everyone knows more about the football industry and the sports industry in general in Middle East after our webinar, and look forward to meet all of you, not virtually, but hopefully in a physical congress or sports event very soon. Thank you very much.
Bye. Take care.
Thank you. Stay safe. Thank you to everyone.
Stay safe.
Thanks, really. I learned a lot of interesting things today. Thank you. Grazie.